heavily once this college football playoff ends. It's going to be rapid too, so please check out that as well. So that will do it for that portion. Let's jump right into this. Texas wins 38-24. Let's recap this game real quick. So, Gerald, what are some things that you saw on offense that you liked and are hoping, obviously, that continue to go forward?
I mean, the easy answer, right, is the running game, right? And Clemson, we said it before the game. Clemson folks said it before the game. Like, the Clemson run defense isn't that great, but ultimately, like, they're pretty talented. And outside of Georgia, they're probably the most talented defense Texas has played this year. And Texas had its way with them on the ground. The outside zone was hitting. I mean, Jaden Blue cracked two rushes for like 111 yards, 112 yards on two big runs, on two big touchdown runs. So, like, that's a massive win for Texas. I don't know if they'll get pushing 300 yards against every opponent, but if they can get 200 yards rushing, I mean, really, that's the way that the offense goes. If the running game is going, the offense is usually really good. The two games this year, it didn't get going. The two Georgia games, the two losses. So, like, that to me is the biggest issue. Now, Sark said in his presser today that Cam Williams, his knee is better than we hoped, which is good. And again, he also said that Jake Majors probably could have gone back in against Clemson if they needed him to. So the offensive line, notwithstanding, Trevor Gooseby did a really good job in relief for Cam Williams on Saturday against Clemson. So, like, the run game was exactly what it needed to be. And Quinn Ewers, frankly, avoided the backbreaking turnovers. Like, he had the one interception, but it wasn't his fault. He played within the offense, played confidently, pushed the ball downfield, not as much as he did a couple of weeks ago against Georgia, but pushed the ball down the field, found his receivers. No drops in this game, which was good. So, like, it just felt like they cleaned up a lot of the stuff that plagued them against Georgia in the SEC championship game.
No, and I agree. And it's funny, a couple of weeks ago I said I'd be interested to see if Cameron Williams went out, how Trevor Gooseby would slide into the right tackle position. I had a theory that maybe he'd be just as good or if not better. I think there really wasn't that much drop-off to when he came into the game, and he was the second highest rated, according to Pro Football Focus, in the SEC championship game, and he was one of the highest rated offensive linemen again sliding in. So he's going to be really good next year. I think Cameron Williams was road grading people early in this game, though. Both him and Banks are getting after it. I have a stat here. CJ Vogel tweeted this out. This is pretty crazy. 14 carries, 115 yards on runs to the right side of the offensive lineman. So the right guard and right tackle were getting movement there. And that honestly has been the weak portion of the Texas offensive line in pass protection and in the run game. So that's really good to see that they're doing it, the dirty work there in the run game. And that's a combination of Cameron Williams and Trevor Gooseby's time. So we really didn't miss much there, and really good job by those guys. It's going to be interesting what the Cameron Williams injury is. Again, they don't have reports on injuries for the college football playoff, which I don't really like. I think that should be added. That makes no sense to me. But I'm interested to see what that is. And you could tell just by the way Majors was on the sideline hanging out, chilling with people, talking. Like, he definitely could have gone back in. I'm fine with them holding him out at that point. The only thing I noticed from Hayden Conner sliding into center, there are a couple low snaps. That's about it. But as long as your quarterback can catch him, that's all I need. I don't need Seth McLaughlin out there with the Alabama where he's bouncing the snaps. That's disaster waiting to happen, but he wasn't doing that. Were they perfect? No, but good enough. And then Kelvin Banks was phenomenal in this game. Again, according to Pro Football Focus, he didn't allow any pressures or sacks. Typical Kelvin Banks, played very well. And these 10 days are going to help him even more. You have 10 games to get better. I think it's going to help out Isaiah Bond too. I think there's a decent chance you see Isaiah Bond, because at that point it would be for about a month or even a little bit longer since he played last. To me, that should be enough, hopefully, to get on the field. Again, if he's not like 90+%, don't play him in this game. I don't think we need him, honestly, and we'll get into that later when we preview Arizona State. But it was nice to see this offense, get the run game going. And this is the thing. I still don't know if the question has been answered. Is it a Georgia thing with the run game, or is it definitely is part of it, or is it who we're playing to? Because is Clemson a great defense? No, they were 8th in the ACC against the run, which the ACC as a whole isn't a very good conference. So if you're 8th and gets run in that conference, you're probably not that good at stopping the run. My question will be answered when we play the Ohio State, the Oregon, if we do win this Arizona State game. But it is nice to see it going. But it's been going. Like, if you look at it, it went the last month of the season. It was going versus Kentucky. It was going versus A&M, and it was going versus any other team before that other than Georgia. It's really been going. So it's nice to see that it's starting to lean and look like it is a Georgia issue, and we may have to solve that later on if we do play him again. But it's nice to see a guy going into this game.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just be real. Everybody in the country will likely, I say that. There are a lot of other teams that will also have a Georgia issue. It's not just unique to Texas. I think the Texas issue of Georgia is unique. But Georgia, even though they're not last year's Georgia or 2 years ago Georgia, they're still the Georgia freaking Bulldogs, and Kirby Smart is still their coach. But like, not to harp on the run game too much, but I think the stat that jumped out to me is that Texas was just gashing them in the run. 8 running plays longer than 10 yards, 216 yards on those big chunk runs. Like, that is massive. Now, you're not going to do that every week, but if you get 5-6 yards a rush, that's first down. That's a first down every 2 rushes, right? So like, that's enough to get the job done. And if the running game is going, that opens up the play action. We saw Texas do a lot of great work in the play action in this game. A lot of those linebackers just freezing and allowing a wide receiver or a tight end, Gunnar Helm, to have one or two steps they need to create that space. And there were spots where Texas had and even missed on some things. The one throw that I think everybody takes issue with on Quinn Ewers, that crossing route to Matthew Golden, that he put the ball maybe 2 yards behind him instead of 2 yards in front of him and letting it run into it. Like that, if that ball goes a different way, the final score looks probably different for the game. So like, even in a game where Texas looked pretty dominant, there was still meat left on the bone, which it's less frustrating when Texas wins by 2 scores instead of loses by 2 scores. But still, this was a good win. Not, the health issues aside, it's a good win with stuff to coach, and I don't mind that.
Yeah, 100%. Texas has yet to play its A game. I don't know if you'll get that from this team. That just may be part of the recipe this year is you don't get that A game, which, again, it's the 2 separate mind things. If we don't get our A game versus Oregon, Ohio State, we're probably not winning that game, but we'll beat Arizona State with our B- game. We'll beat them with a C+ game even. So just take what this team is at this point, enjoy it. And Quinn, I'll touch on that. I thought he was good in this game. 17-24, 202 yards. Only interception was off the DeAndre Moore drop, and Karam's there was no one near him. So, of course, that Karam's 5 yards forward, and 2 guys almost pick it off. I forget who ended up picking it off, but then you get the blindside block there. And that's something, too. Someone mentioned this, and I agree with it. Most of the interceptions that Karam off of guys are when they're coming out of their breaks. Like, when they're coming out of the breaks of the route, they're not catching the ball for whatever reason. They drop it, and that needs to be addressed because that's the thing that Quinn is best at, is throwing with anticipation and throwing right when they come out of the breaks of the route. So they have to get better at that. And DeAndre Moore has struggled the last 2 games. He's dropped 3 or 4 passes. The wide receivers as a whole, we've dropped, I think, 8 passes the last 2 games or 7 passes the last 2 games. You can't be doing that. That's something that's new, too. That's not something that has been happening throughout the whole season. That's just the last 2 games, so that definitely needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and it's weird they didn't chart that, at least the game stats that the team puts out. They didn't chart that as a drop, which is weird, but that is very clearly a drop. I'm not sure why, but that I would call that a drop. But I think the other side of that, we've talked about the offense quite a bit, but when you think about that game and the performance Texas put up, the defense was just the run defense specifically. I think Clemson did not have its A game. They were down 2 running backs most of the game, but when push comes to shove, when you hold somebody on goal to go 4 straight plays to essentially cinch the game for yourselves, that's a major win. That's a culture play. That's a defensive play. And it harkens back to something I talked about after the first game where Texas was up 50-something points on Colorado State. It was nope, we're not letting them in our end zone. That's the same type of culture that gets that 4th and 1 stop in a college football playoffs. That to me is huge. The defense, the secondary, Clemson found something they liked. And let's be real, Texas will potentially play Dylan Gabriel in a couple of weeks. So, but until that point, Cade Klubnik is far and away the best quarterback they faced, and he was able to do some stuff against the secondary, which is something that the red flags go up a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. We can touch on that now. Malik Muhammad, and I was interested to see the stats. So he was targeted 8 times, 6 receptions for 120 yards. Cade Klubnik threw it for 336 yards. So a third of the receiving yards came on Malik Muhammad. You got to be better than that. And he's had his, I know we haven't played the most dynamic offenses, but I've seen that all year. He hasn't been the same guy as he was last year. He's been fine, but he hasn't been, Manny Island or Muhammad Island or whatever people want to call it out there. He's just not that guy this year for whatever reason. Call it a sophomore slump or whatever you will, but he was getting exposed. Like either way, like what was happening to me, what I saw is he was either setting up too far back, and then guys, when they ran like dig routes, he didn't bite on it quick enough and they just hit him. And then when he was too far up, he was too slow to react when they hit him on the deep routes. So something's got to change there. And then Jalen Gilbo quietly got benched for a portion of this game. Like he did not play a good game either. He did come back in later, but they benched for a couple series because he was struggling. And you could tell they were frustrated out with the linebackers and back end. There were a lot of arguments between the players, like looking at each other like, what the hell are you doing, basically? And that was from the jump, from that first drive, when you see that mesh crossing pattern thing. Everyone's like turns and looks like, what are you doing here? And I think it was Jalen Gilbo who got caught up in that. So that's got to get fixed. We actually at one point slid Jahdae Barron back into his nickel spot, and he's fine. He's definitely not the issue, but Jalen Gilbo and Malik Muhammad need to look at the tape hard, because if they struggle like that versus, again, in Ohio State and Oregon, it's going to be even a longer day, because those wide receivers with the quarterbacks they're playing at the rate they're playing right now would definitely struggle.
Yeah, it's something to watch, something to monitor. I did not expect that from Manny Muhammad. I'm not sure what it was, but they've got to get it cleaned up. And again, Cade Klubnik is an NFL quarterback. So we're not going to also say Cade Klubnik could very well be a very good NFL quarterback when it's all said and done. He's got a very NFL friendly skill set. He's able to reset the pocket and move with his feet. He's got a great arm throwing it downfield. So we very well could be looking at one of the better quarterbacks in this in the coming draft class. So you have to throw that caveat there. But either way, Dylan Gabriel, one of the most experienced player in the country, I'll basically say at this point. He's been starting for at least 2 presidential administrations. So he's got all that experience. And then Ohio State's got a ton of firepower. So if Texas gets past Arizona State, they've got something similar on the horizon to look out for.
Yeah, 100%. And we don't give up explosive plays, but I believe Clemson hit us for 8 explosive plays through the passing game, which is by far the most we've given up versus anyone. And I'm fine with, if that was 4 or 5, I think that's reasonable, but 8 to me was a little bit too much, even though this is the best wide receivers and quarterback we face. I will say this though, piggybacking off your point, when we played Michael Penix in Washington last year, he threw for, I believe, 11.1 yards per attempt, which is an outrageous number. Cade Klubnik threw for 7.8. So that's a gigantic difference. Now, do I think Cade Klubnik is quite as good as Michael Penix? No. And do I think their weapons are nearly as good as Michael Penix? No. But let's say that accounts for 1 of those yards. You're still giving up 3 yards per attempt less than you would have. That's still pretty good and an improvement. Now, do I think this is an all-time great secondary after this game? No, they're not. They still have holes, and Malik Muhammad definitely, again, has to figure it out. But overall, I thought the defense played pretty well. And a shout-out to Bill Norton. I've shouted him out a couple times in the A&M game. I shouted him versus the SEC in the SEC championship game. He's played phenomenally in the 10 to 20 snaps he gets. He's very good at submarining on those 3rd and 4th down stops. He just blows it up there and allows the edges to come in and clean it up.
I mean, you cannot beat that. You cannot beat a guy who the space eaters, right? The guys who I'm going to sit my big fat behind down in the middle of this formation and blow it up, cause you to either try to go over the top and get blown up by a linebacker, or to cut outside and go away from your blockers. That is perfection. And that's a big part of the reason why Texas was able to come up with that 4th down stop. Was Bill Norton was nope, I'm going to be the low man here. I'm going to be the low man wins. I'm going to just take up all the space I can and let the playmakers make plays. And those are the things that don't show up on the stat sheet. But my friend, Kyle, the guy who I host the podcast with, and we watched the game together on Saturday, and we both were Bill Norton did it on that drive. Bill Norton did it. And, we say his name like Bill Brasky from the old Saturday Night Live commercial or the old Saturday Night Live sketch. It was Bill Norton day all day on Saturday. It was great to see.
Yeah, he's been really good at just doing his job, honestly. And that's why this defense has been so good, is because as individuals, they do what they're supposed to, and then they communicate with the others of what their job is, and they do it well. I thought there were some breakdowns, but overall, pretty good game. It was versus the best competition we played quarterback and wide receiver wise. And that's the thing too. The first time you see it should be the hardest. So from here on out, you should get incrementally better when you do face it. Because this week too, Arizona, I think Sam Levitt's probably the 2nd best quarterback we're going to face. He's pretty damn good. He's a lesser version of Cade Klubnik. He's accurate. He's got a decent arm and he can move around. So we're going to get challenged a little bit. They don't have the wide receivers with Jordan Tyson out that Clemson does, but this will be another challenge. Again, the 2nd best quarterback you'll face. And then when we play Ohio State or Oregon, that's either going to be the 1st or 2nd or 3rd, debatably, best quarterback he faced. You're playing good competition, good quarterbacks. Honestly, if we get the national championship game, that will probably be, if it's Notre Dame or Georgia, that will probably be the worst quarterback we faced on the run here. So
it'll be a step down for sure.
Yeah. Now, Penn State's another thing. I like Drew Allen. I think he's good. So that'd be interesting. But just get slightly better. That's all I'm asking. Like Manny Muhammad, do I expect you to, coming to this game, I think his best game was like 43 yards given up. I don't expect that when you're playing this competition, but can you cut it down to 70? Cut it down to 70, 80. I can live with that. Over 100 is just a little bit too much. A little bit too much there.
Don't be the guy that we can see on the broadcast that's getting picked on. Like that's like I've never seen Manny Muhammad get picked on. He got picked on Saturday. Just don't let people be able to pick you out as getting picked on, and that's fine.
Yeah. And the last good thing I want to hit on, Jaden Blue. He got his opportunity back. This was by far the most carries he's had because, let's be honest here, he's been at the doghouse because he fumbles. Really, other than the Texas A&M game, he really didn't do much in the SEC championship game. He got like no run in that game. They used him mostly as a wide receiver in the Texas A&M game. This game, they trust him because Trey Wisner got hurt, and he delivered. He did not fumble the ball. He hit explosive plays, and he lived up to that talent level that we know he has. He's the most talented running back on this team. His issue is fumbling. If he doesn't fumble, he's amazing. So congratulations to him in the game he had.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be like, there's nothing more to say than like he had 115 yards on two rushes. That's, fans have been waiting for those explosive plays. He's been waiting. You can tell he gets frustrated when he gets that shoestring tackle. He's like, I was going to break that one. And he finally broke two of them in this game. One on kind of zone right, one on zone left. Either side of the field, he does not discriminate. But it wasn't just those plays, but like just the way that he consistently found room, found space, was able to. I was impressed, honestly, with the patience for both of the running backs. I think that's Tashard Choice and sitting behind Bijan Robinson for a little bit. Like the patience that they showed, and that's not normally Jaden Blue's strong suit, is waiting for the blocks to set up. And we can tell the difference. He was a little more patient, used his vision a little more. And when he did that, he was able to find the crease. He was able to find that 1 or 2 steps that he needs. And if he's got 2 steps on the edge, there's not a person on the field, or 90% of the players on the field aren't going to be able to catch him. He's faster than any geometry they could put out there. So, like, again, big ups to him for finally having the game that we all knew he had in him, because that is what we expected. I picked him as a breakout player for Texas this year because of that exact thing. He is going to be the fastest player on the field more often than not.
100%. I mean, that first run was crazy. He wasn't going anywhere near full speed, basically jogging around the edge and blew past all the Clemson defenders. Didn't even get touched on the play. Yeah. And then the other play, he's slowing down the last 20 yards, looking behind him so he doesn't get stripped.
Making sure nobody picks his pocket.
Yeah. And yeah, he's just so fun to watch. It's frustrating because it's kind of like, you know who he is to me, NBA terms? J.R. Smith. Like J.R. Smith, super like athletic, super entertaining to watch. But then you're like, brother, why are you? Sometimes you're just like so dumb. It just reminds me of the finals play of he doesn't realize that it's a tie game. He dribbles out the clock, and you're like, you are so like talented, and you do such boneheaded stuff. Jaden Blue's kind of the same. Like the dude's super talented, but he just can't get out of his own way.
Yeah, and when he's on though. When he's electric because J.R. Smith has just as many. He hit 15 threes in the fourth quarter. How did he do that? Same type of thing with Jaden Blue. When he's on, and he was on against Clemson.
Yeah, 100%. That will do it for the recap. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below.